Hello, friends, and welcome to today's episode of the Juicebox Podcast. I can't read the entire description I have here for today's episode. I'm just going to go with the part I highlighted, which says, this is a deep episode about having fucked up parents, type 1 diabetes, eating issues, and a lot more. Nothing you hear on the Juicebox Podcast should be considered advice, medical or otherwise. Always consult a physician before making any changes to your healthcare plan. Don't forget to save 40% off of your entire order at CozyEarth.com. All you have to do is use the offer code JUICEBOX at checkout. That's JUICEBOX at checkout to save 40% at CozyEarth.com. When you place your first order for AG1 with my link, you'll get 5 free travel packs and a free year supply of vitamin D. Drink AG1.com/juicebox. When you use my link, Hungryroot.com/juicebox, you'll get 40% off of your first delivery. That'll happen automatically at checkout at Hungryroot.com/juicebox. Did you know if just one person in your family has type 1 diabetes, you're up to 15 times more likely to get it too? So screen it like you mean it. One blood test can spot type 1 diabetes early. Tap now, talk to a doctor, or visit screenedfortype1.com for more info. Today's episode of the Juicebox Podcast is sponsored by the Contour NextGen blood glucose meter. This is the meter that my daughter has on her person right now. It is incredibly accurate and waiting for you at contournext.com/juicebox. This episode of the Juicebox Podcast is sponsored by the Eversense CGM. And sure, all CGM systems use transcutaneous sensors that are inserted into the skin and last 7 to 14 days. But the Eversense sensor is inserted completely under the skin, lasting 6 months. EversenseCGM.com/juicebox.
Hi, my name is Kristen, and I have been a type 1 diabetic for 25 years.
Ooh, how old are you?
28.
When you were 3?
Yeah, I had just turned 3, so just hit my 25-year anniversary.
Wow, that's really something. Arden was just a couple weeks past her second birthday.
Yeah, everyone acts like I was very young when I was diagnosed. I'm like, I've heard about Arden, so it makes me feel older.
There was somebody on recently, I think their child was diagnosed at like 9 months. Every once in a while you'll hear a story about like in the hospital. Like that's not very frequent, but I've heard them before.
Yeah, absolutely.
3's young though. Make no mistake. Did your parents have other children at the time?
Yes. So I'm the middle of 3, and they had my older sister and younger brother at the time as well.
Oh, everybody was there. Wait, you were 3 and your mom already had another baby?
Yeah, we're all exactly 2 years apart, so things moved quickly.
Do you notice your mom on a similar pattern for other things? Does she go on vacation every 24 months or like, no?
No, I think it was just at that point in their life, they were very routine. I mean, they acted like some of it was a surprise, so I don't know.
I thought you were going to say prolific. Did they consider continuing? Do you think they wanted more than 3 kids?
I know originally, but there was a lot of issues, like in general. My mom wasn't really supposed to have any past 1. I think by the time they hit 3, they had to stop.
Oh, I thought maybe you got diabetes and they were like, whoop, nope, we're done. That's enough.
No, that didn't stop them.
Hey, your parents are, what are they, hippies? Catholic? What are we looking at here?
Catholic.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha. We're making an army for Jesus. I understand. It's hilarious. Yeah, I don't understand people who I don't get it. Like it's expensive to have kids and it throws me off when people keep pumping them out.
I always thought I wanted like 4, but I don't think so anymore.
Do you have any children now?
I do. I have a 2-year-old and I am a little over 12 weeks with my second.
Wait, Kristen, you're preggers?
I am.
Congratulations. That's so nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, lovely. Oh, so tell me about your oldest. How old again?
He's turned 2 in September. So he's a truck car, vehicle loving little boy. Yeah, I've been up with him since 5 a.m. So he's an early riser.
He's like, hey, let's get up now and push this truck into the wall.
Pretty much, yeah.
Or we could lay here a little longer. What would be wrong with that? Mommy's cooking a baby. Oh, my gosh.
No, yeah, he gets up talking about trucks in his crib. So that's when I know it's time to get in.
No kidding. Does your husband drive a truck or?
No, we didn't even own a car until my son was like 1 because we were living in the city. So he just naturally came out this way, I guess.
You didn't even own a car. You were just you're just like, hey, we can walk. We're in the city. This kid's like, we need a truck.
Yes.
That's so interesting, isn't it? Well, hey, I mean, let's, I guess, start at the beginning. So do you have any recollection of your diabetes? And I guess at what age do you start remembering it?
Yeah, I actually have a few flashes of memories from my diagnosis. I think just because it was such a big event in my life. So I remember being in the hospital and my parents getting an injection. I think that the nurses were trying to make me not as afraid. So they just kind of stuck my parents the needle to show me it wasn't a big deal, which my parents later told me they weren't aware it was going to happen.
Look, honey, it's no big deal. Boink.
Yeah. Not really sure if that would happen anymore, but
yeah, I gotcha. Go ahead.
And then I remember coming home from the hospital, but I don't really remember the actual diagnosis too much. I know that when it was my 3rd birthday, I was going kind of around to people, which I vaguely remember, and asking different people for drinks because I knew if I kept asking my parents, they would stop giving me juice. So I was going around to different people and trying to work the system to get as much liquid as possible. But I was not diagnosed until a few months after that. So I think it was just kind of brewing at the time.
Look at your little drug-seeking habits. At 3 years old, like, I'll go to this emergency room, and then if they say no, I'll go to this one.
Yeah, I was working the system.
That's super interesting at 3 years old that you were like, I'll just keep testing this dam to see where it cracks. I mean, how would you know that? I guess you're just so thirsty, you get desperate, even at that age.
Yeah, and I think I knew that my parents, just knowing them at the time, I mean, they've always been fairly strict, so I probably knew that they would say, hey, you've had enough juice, stop. So I just knew I had to go to the grandparents, the aunts and uncles, and everyone else just to try to get as much as possible.
Getting older means a world of change, but some things still stay the same, like being at risk for type 1 diabetes. Because type 1 can happen at any age, so screen it like you mean it. If just one person in your family has type 1, you're up to 15 times more likely to get it too. And 50% of type 1 diagnoses happen after the age of 18. So screen it like you mean it. Type 1 diabetes starts long before you need insulin, and one blood test could help you spot it early and lower the risk of serious complications like diabetic ketoacidosis, known as DKA. So don't get caught by surprise. Screen it like you mean it, because getting answers now can help you get prepared. The more you know, the more you can do. So don't wait. Talk to a doctor about how to get screened. Tap now or visit screenfortype1.com to learn more. Again, that's screenfortype1.com and screen it like you mean it. ContourNext.com/juicebox. That's the link you'll use to find out more about the Contour NextGen blood glucose meter. When you get there, there's a little bit at the top. You can click right on blood glucose monitoring. I'll do it with you. Go to meters, click on any of the meters. I'll click on the NextGen, and you're going to get more information. It's easy to use and highly accurate. SmartLight provides a simple understanding of your blood glucose levels. And of course, with second chance sampling technology, you can save money with fewer wasted test strips. As if all of that wasn't enough, the Contour NextGen also has a compatible app for an easy way to share and see your blood glucose results. ContourNext.com/juicebox. And if you scroll down at that link, you're going to see things like a buy now button. You could register your meter after you purchase it. Or what is this? Download a coupon. Oh, receive a free Contour NextGen blood glucose meter. Do tell. ContourNext.com/juicebox. Head over there now. Get the same accurate and reliable meter that we use. Just like just popping around that party, being like, "Hey, juice." And they're like, "Oh, look how cute she is. Give her juice."
Right. This is fine.
So growing up with it, I mean, 25 years ago. I mean, what year was that?
I
1999?
was diagnosed at the beginning of 99.
Okay. Do you like how I was like, I'm trying to do the math on it? It's 2024. There was no math. It's just so ridiculous. I said it and then I was like, oh no, dummy. Arden was diagnosed in 2006. So you have 10 years on her prior. And we were only getting needles and a crappy meter. So were you right at the advent of like Lantus and everything becoming big? Or I guess that was the late 80s. So why don't I just ask you what your management was like? I'm sorry.
I was definitely regular in NPH. I was eating on a schedule. So every night growing up, I had to have dinner at 4:30 p.m. I ate the same amount of carbs for every meal, the same breakdown, the same schedule pretty much every day with no real deviation from that. And I used syringes. I never used a pen or anything like that up until I started my pump in third grade.
Third grade. Okay. By the way, anybody wondering if we ever edit out content, the fact that you just heard me so inartfully ask that question tells you we don't edit things out. Because I should have just said, what was your management like? So in third grade, what kind of pump do you get?
I got the mini med. So I actually don't think I've heard other people mention this on the show before. We actually had that summer leading up to third grade, salespeople from different pump companies come to our house and kind of demonstrate their product. I don't think that happens anymore. I haven't heard other people talk about that, but that's what they did for us. And I ended up with the mini med, and I assume it was kind of the Medtronic, and I assume that was just because of insurance.
My parents had a vacuum cleaner that was sold to them by a door-to-door salesman.
Yeah, well, apparently you used to get pumps that way too.
Yeah, hi, I'm here from Mini Med. They come into your living room and spread it all out. And
yeah. And I remember the Animus people coming, the Cosmo. So back when there was all those now defunct companies, they would all come to my house.
Yeah. Now, the internet fixed all that, by the way.
Yeah. It's a little more efficient now.
Now they give $50 to an Instagram influencer and they tell you about it.
Exactly.
It's a little cheaper for the company, actually. Okay, so you start a pump so that now you're using just, Humalog maybe?
Yeah, I know I've switched a few times because of insurance between Humalog, Novolog, but between those two, pretty much the same. And I used just the mini med with that pretty much until a year and a half ago is when I switched to Tandem. So I was with Medtronic for quite a while.
Okay. You using the T-Slim now, the X2?
Yes. So I'm using the T-Slim, but I'm not using any of the
algorithm.
Looping. Yeah.
How come?
Well, I wanted to have tighter goals. And also with pregnancy, I know it's not really possible to get those same pregnancy goals with it.
Yeah.
And because I knew I was hoping to get pregnant, I didn't want to kind of change my settings to fit for the algorithm because I knew I would be switching off of it. So I kind of I've been going this way and then hoping that eventually I'll actually use some of those features.
Okay. All right. I get you. All right. So first baby was with a Medtronic pump still?
Yes. Yeah. But Dexcom.
So you have a very short list of what you want to talk about here. And it runs a bit of a gamut. I'll lay it out for people. It says shame, mental health, eating disorders. My favorite part, family dysfunction. And then pregnancy. By the way, I knew you had family dysfunction when you told me you were Catholic.
Yeah, it's part of the deal.
No shade on anybody. I just know the game. Why don't we start at the beginning? What did you feel ashamed by?
I think that a lot of people that I hear talking about in these communities are very open with their diagnosis and everything. I have never been very open with it. I think that I have evolved a bit. Now I can wear my Dexcom on my arm and everything. But growing up, I didn't tell people. Nobody knew I had diabetes. Even in college, my roommates didn't know. Just nobody knew.
Wait, Kristen, there's the story. You lived in a space with someone who didn't know you had type 1?
Yes.
How do you accomplish that?
I just never was open with anything about it. So if I had anything that needed addressed, I addressed it. It was before I had a CGM, so there weren't alarms going off.
Okay.
Yeah, I just never mentioned it.
They didn't see infusion sets or alcohol wipes or nothing.
Nope, I would change my pump sites in the bathroom or when they weren't home. I just kept it tucked away. I wasn't like, I wouldn't lie about it if somebody were to ask me, but nobody would know to ask me about it. So it was just tucked away, hidden. Nobody knew.
Huh. Were you guys close? Like, did these same people know about your like dating life or, your home life or anything like that?
Yeah, I think that I kind of kept people at an arm's length. There were roommates that I was close through when I went through. But again, I just never mentioned it. I had one person I lived with for 2 years. So they eventually kind of knew, but they didn't know anything about it. And if I had been laying on the floor, they wouldn't have known what to do about that.
Did that ever occur to you? Did you ever think maybe I should talk to these people so they understand the safety aspects of this?
I think looking back, it definitely has. But I think I've put myself in the past through situations where it's like, well, if I'm laying on the floor, I almost would have preferred that than have to tell all these people about it.
Is that part of your personality or was that specific to diabetes?
I think it's both. I think that growing up with diabetes for pretty much my entire life, I kind of just came up that way and I kind of just adjusted myself around that. And I think that in general, I'm kind of quiet about things. I'm more reserved. So I think that also played into it for sure.
Interesting. Do you look back and have feelings about the way it was handled? Do you wish it was different?
I think it's still a work in progress. So it's hard for me to look back fully. I think one thing I think about a lot is I remember when I was working at Wendy's in high school, there were times where I felt low and I was working and I just wouldn't stop until I felt like I could sneak away and get a sip of juice. And looking back, I'm like, that was a really, really, really bad move. But at the time, I'm like, I would rather have nobody think anything of this and be exactly like everybody else, even if that puts me at risk. And I think that that's something that looking back is absolutely ridiculous. But at the time, it felt like the right thing to do.
Yeah, you don't want to let Dave down.
Right. Gotta flip those burgers.
Yeah, it's a very Wendy's specific reference that I'm not certain everybody's going to get, but that's fine. I think I'm surprised by this because of how many people say, oh, I grew up with it, so it's just second nature to me. But that's not the case for everybody. And you're being very clear and open about that fact. So it didn't matter that you had it since you were 3 and you were accustomed to it and all that other stuff. Was there shame in your house about it? Like, where did you learn to be ashamed?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it was specific around that. I mean, I know growing up, especially with the pump, my mom would always help me find ways to like hide it in clothing and say, oh, like, we got to make sure it's covered up. So it was a little covered up that way. When I did first get my Dexcom and have it on my arm, there were comments like, oh, is there any way that you could put it somewhere where it's not as visible? So there definitely were some comments about that.
Who said that to you? Who said, can we put it somewhere less visible?
My mom.
Oh. Mm-hmm. Did she ever mention you look fat or anything like that?
No, because of the eating disorder.
Oh my God. So, well, yeah. But so how long had that been happening?
So that happened when I was in high school. I think it really started around 8th grade, but it reached kind of its height in 9th grade.
What did the height of it look like?
So I was extremely restrictive, anorexic. I was eating maybe max 500 or less calories a day. Mm-hmm. I had lost pretty much all of my body fat. I had bruising down my back because just my spine pressing against chairs was so intense.
Wow.
So at that point, because of the diabetes, I couldn't go to an inpatient facility, at least that they felt comfortable with. So I would go around 2 hours away. We'd stay at a Ronald McDonald house and stay there through the week, go home on the weekends, start all over again. So I did that for quite a few months. And then after that, I was continuing to do outpatient care once I went back to school and back to my normal life.
Your mom or your dad traveled with you to the therapy and stayed with you all week?
Yeah. So it was all day. I would be at a center for it where they would do therapies, things like that. My parents would work when they could from the Ronald McDonald house and then kind of swap out. So they did every other week so that they could use their FMLA and kind of go that way. The
tree I was barking up earlier was, was your mom one of those people who's like, oh, are you going to wear that? Like stuff like that. But she wasn't?
She can be. Yes.
Yeah. I gotcha.
Yeah.
And do you think the eating disorder came from like psychological stuff? Do you think it came from diabetes pressure? Is it a blend?
I think a blend for sure. I think that part of it was because I was such a strict, regimented person with my eating before the pump. I convinced myself that because of the pump, I was able to eat more freely, and that was a bad thing. I was not overweight at that time or anything, but I think just going through, the changes of becoming a middle schooler, high schooler, there were some changes. And I think that that was hard for me. And I think that there was just a level of perfection that was expected that I kind of was reaching that way.
Is it an expectation from yourself or from other people?
From both. I think that, growing up, it was definitely you have to get straight A's, you have to present yourself well, be very behaved, seen and not heard. I think it was a lot of those things that I didn't really have an outlet to be imperfect. So this was one more way that I could supposedly make myself perfect.
25 years ago, you were raised to be seen and not heard?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, not exactly, but it was definitely stricter upbringing.
Interesting. I feel like there's more you want to say, but you're trying to be polite. Is that happening or no?
No, I mean, I'm sure we'll get into everything.
Oh, I see. Okay. We'll just warm you up a little bit then. And then you'll dish. I got it. The process of going to that therapy and staying at the Ronald McDonald House was months long?
Yes. And then afterwards, I did additional
follow care,
therapies and visits and all of that.
Did it help you?
I, at the time, didn't feel very helped by it. I think that there were, with the diabetes, additional layers there, especially because, for example, if I had to treat a low blood sugar and had to eat food for that reason, they were like, oh, well, those don't count. Those calories don't count towards things. So that became really hard for me. I think that, it was just really difficult. And I think that it wasn't until I kind of had my own internal decision to change that there was actually much progress made. I was just trying to do whatever I could to get out so that I could restart my eating disorder again once people were not looking at me anymore.
Oh, this is like, I've heard addicts talk about this in rehab. Like, they're like, I just wanted to do my time and get out so I could start using it again.
Yeah, I figured if I just did what I needed to do, I could get out. And I think at the time too, I was also fairly suicidal and things like that, just depressed. And I think that I just kind of was like, okay, I'm just going to give up because this doesn't matter. And then I'll fix it later.
What does an eating disorder look like? Were you like binging, purging? Were you not eating? Like, how does that work? This episode of the Juicebox Podcast is sponsored by the only 6-month wear implantable CGM on the market. And it's very unique. So you go into an office. I've actually seen an insertion done online, like a live one, they recorded it. The entire video is less than 8 minutes long, and they're talking most of the time. The insertion took no time at all, right? So you go into the office, they insert the sensor. Now it's in there and working for 6 months. You go back 6 months later, they pop out that one, put in another one. So 2 office visits a year to get really accurate and consistent CGM data. But that's neither here nor there for what I'm trying to say. So this thing's under your skin, right? And you then wear a transmitter over top of it. Transmitter's got this nice, gentle silicone adhesive that you change daily. So very little chance of having skin irritations. That's a plus. So you put the transmitter on, it talks to your phone app, tells you your blood sugar, your alerts, your alarms, etc. But if you want to be discreet for some reason, you take the transmitter off, just swoop, comes right off. No, not like peeling at it or having to rub off adhesive. It just kind of pops right off. This silicone stuff, really cool. You'll say it. And now you're ready for your big day, whatever that day is. It could be a prom or a wedding or just a moment when you don't want something hanging on your arm. The Eversense CGM allows you to do that without wasting a sensor because you just take the transmitter off and then when you're ready to use it again, you pop it back on. Maybe you just want to take a shower without rocking a sensor with a bar of soap. Just remove the transmitter and put it back on when you're ready. EversenseCGM.com/juicebox. You really should check it out.
I was just not eating for the most part. I was eating very, very, very little food. If I was eating any food, I would kind of make sure it was a carb or something so that I could input it into my pump and count that.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't realize at the time that this might have been part of it, but because I was eating so little, I needed very little insulin and was always going low. So I would just disconnect from my pump quite a bit for hours and hours. So that was probably very bad for my health. And I was also bolusing ghost carbs in there so that it looked like there was a record of me eating things that I was not.
Would you take your infusion set off and bolus and just let the insulin come out and not give it to yourself?
Yeah, I would just let drip into the air.
Oh, wow. Well, you're industrious. How old were you at that point?
I was in 9th grade.
Interesting. Yeah. Suicidal, like actual ideation, or just generalized, like I don't want to live, that kind of stuff?
Suicidal to the fact that I had a plan that I figured I could bring out if I needed to.
Oh, you had a back pocket. I gotcha.
Yeah.
There are people who have disorders, of their mind, and that's obviously true. And there are people who are put in situations that push them into these directions too. I'm trying to figure out which one you are, or if, what your story is.
I think that it was probably a situational, mostly. I think that I struggled a lot with my mental health and things like that growing up. And I think that my mental health has drastically improved since
you got away from your parents.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's what it sounds like. High level stuff. Were you being abused?
No, not physically abused. No.
A lot of yelling and screaming.
Yeah.
Yeah. A lot of do it exactly like this or you're in trouble. That kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Were they mentally unbalanced?
They weren't going to therapy or anything like that.
No, I didn't think so.
But there was a lot of issues, and there were some substance abuse issues as well.
We talking about like a 12-pack a day or beer?
No. So my father still does have issues with alcohol, more of like binging it. Mm-hmm. And I actually didn't realize this until I was in my eating disorder recovery when I was in a clinic there. He sometimes was acting odd picking me up. So when he was showering one day, I checked the top of the closet and I found empty bottles of vodka and things like that.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Was he functioning or not quite functioning?
Functioning. Yeah, he's held a good job and everything like that. But when stressful situations pop up, and apparently this has been kind of throughout his life, it would be like drink an entire bottle of vodka.
Okay. And your mom? Anything with her, or was she just like cowering in a corner?
No, definitely not cowering in a corner. Gotcha. I think that she was just somebody that was a little more vocal and strict. And I think since then, she's also had a lot of medical issues, which have impacted her a bit. And I think somewhat mentally as well. So it was just kind of a frantic and hectic situation to be in.
You think maybe she was trying to keep you guys in line so not to like set your dad off so he wouldn't start drinking?
I don't think so. Truthfully, we were kind of dragged into things more than I think I would drag my children into things. So I think it was just maybe a lack of the emotional maturity to handle things.
Gotcha. Were they young?
Yeah, they were fairly young when they had us. Mm-hmm. So I think she was like 25 when I was, I'm also a fairly,
I was going to say
fairly young. So.
Yeah, you're a younger mom too, but not like super young. But you had your first when you were what, 26?
25, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not saying anything. My son's going to be 24 soon and my wife's 50. So I'm pretty sure she was like 25 or 26.
Yeah. No, my parents are 55 and 56 now.
Yeah. Did they know that I almost cursed. Is it all right if we curse?
Yeah. No, feel free.
Did they know they fucked you up?
No.
They have no idea?
No idea.
Oh, boy, that must make you somewhere between insane and angry when you see them.
Yeah. I think it's just a lot easier, again, once I've left the house, that I can it's fine. I'll just go there and we all put on a face. But I think that also kind of goes into the shame, is that everyone pretends everything's perfectly okay. And that's just kind of what we've decided to do.
Yeah, that's my one of my pet peeves. When you know and I know and neither of us say.
Yeah.
It feels like such an insane waste of time. I can't get involved in it.
I think that they don't know.
They don't know.
Yeah.
So they think and they're still so young, like that's going to go on for years still.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't go away. Like your alcoholism doesn't like fade when you get older. You just keep going. You know what I mean? Like it's, and especially in that functional thing where it doesn't like kill you, but you're always inebriated.
Yeah, he's done treatment more recently.
Oh, that's good.
But again, it's gone in and out.
Yeah, I mean, you're not sitting here feeling very hopeful about it. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I go back and forth. I thought that he had been clean for months, and then when we were there over Christmas, he just randomly went out and drank a bunch and came home that way. So I think I'm hopeful that it was a one-time thing and we'll go back to clean, but I don't put a lot of faith in things, and I just accept them as they come now.
Kristen, are you describing a Christmas that's like out of a 90s movie? Like everybody's there, like you take a big deep breath, you go in the door, you're like, it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. And dad's on the wagon and this is great. And then he literally disappears from the house and comes back loaded.
Pretty much.
Oh, jeez.
He hit it a bit, but yeah.
How about that? Oh, yeah. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. It's just is what it is, right?
Well, I take your point, but it's not okay. But yeah. Did this get your brothers and sisters, their brother and sister, or like are they having their own issues or?
Yeah. I mean, my brother's pretty chill. He's off living a bachelor life. I think it was a little different for him too, just because when he was there, they kind of loosened up a bit when it was just him. Mm-hmm. My sister definitely had some, issues with perfectionism and
the same stuff
and other things. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, geez. Okay. Well, then the eating disorder is not a surprise.
No.
When's the last time you thought of yourself as struggling with it, or is it always a struggle?
I would say probably the last time I intensely struggled with it was college, but I haven't dealt with it to the degree that I needed to seek outside help since then. I think because I was shying away from outside help, but I haven't really dealt with it too badly since then, and definitely not since having my child.
You've been okay. That's great. Hey, can I ask you a question about shame that I don't understand?
Yeah.
You ever kill anybody?
No.
No? You ever sell a child heroin?
No.
No? You ever hit somebody with your car and take off?
No.
What are you ashamed of?
I don't really know. I think it's just one of those things where it's like my own existence sometimes just feels shameful.
I like the way you laugh through it. You get what I'm saying. Or you went to college. You got a degree?
Yes.
Do you use it?
I'm a stay-at-home mom now. I did use it.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, you weren't using it to like make money by turning baby lambs into oil or something like that, right?
No.
Okay.
I was working at a law firm though, so I don't know.
Well, then you were the devil. I didn't realize. Never mind. You deserve all the shame, Kristen. No. But I mean, you went, you learned something, you applied your trade, you met a person, you fell in love, you decided to have a baby, you're taking good care of them, you have diabetes, you're taking care of that. I mean, it's fascinating, isn't it? Like, I'm not like holding you to task on it. It's fascinating. You, by as many accounts as I can count up in a half an hour, are a reasonably decent person. And yet you're ashamed of your own existence.
Yeah. And I think that it's something that I've definitely worked through a lot more. And especially since having kids, have tried to really work through on my own a bit more. Mm-hmm. But I think it's just, I'm somebody that kind of takes in, whether they're even directed at me or not, the ideas of other people. And if there's judgment around things that I'm doing or not doing, I internalize that a lot.
Were you shouted down as a child?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I mean, we got the picture. I think we all know what's going on.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you're on the other side of it, which is nice because, we're not talking about it while it's happening to you, which is
right.
Yeah. Because you can be a little free and easy about talking about it.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to ask a question about having a baby.
Yeah.
You make that first baby on purpose?
Very much so. Yeah.
Okay. All right. And then, I ask because I'm assuming there's lead up and thought about it. And so you want to have your own children. Is in the back of your head, like everything I've been taught about parenting is definitely going to mess up my kid. So I have to do something. Like, how do you know you're going to be okay to do this?
I think for sure. And I think that perhaps because of my upbringing, I shy away from like screaming, conflicts, things like that. So even with my husband's and I marriage and our relationship, we talk things through. We never insult each other. We never scream. So I knew that I could handle that part, which also made me think that, okay, we sat down, we could talk about how we wanted to parent our children, what we wanted to take from our parents, and also a lot of what we didn't want to take from them.
Mm-hmm.
And I think being able to kind of look at it more analytically and look at how we actually want to handle things was helpful. I think that in practice, obviously things are harder, but I never feel like I'm going to be screaming at my child. I've never done anything that made me feel that way. So I feel like at least I can make enough changes to have a more positive upbringing for him.
Kristen, when your husband does something dumb, and we know he does because he's a boy. So when he does something dumb, do you want to scream and you keep it inside, or it's not your first thought?
It's not my first thought.
Oh, very cool. Good for you.
Yeah.
That's excellent. And did he grow up in a similar way?
He grew up in a different way. So he definitely was somebody that had a lot more leniency around him, but his parents were divorced when he was a little older. So I think that he saw like an unhealthy relationship, but he also didn't have parents screaming at him, or he didn't have like the list of chores and all of that type of thing.
Oh, it was your job to do their job, huh?
Yeah, I mean, in high school, there were medical issues going on in my family, but like I'm the one that cooked dinner every night. Things like that.
Every night?
Yeah.
They made the girl with the eating disorder make dinner?
Yeah.
Interesting. Did they know you had an eating disorder before the lead up to the therapy, or was it like dropped in their lap all out of nowhere?
I think that they partially did, but I think that the way they kind of approached it wasn't super helpful. So it just kind of worsened. And then, yeah, we moved from there.
Irish?
Yeah, Irish, German, English, all the white European things.
I don't know if people are impressed when I do this or not, but is the husband Catholic too?
No. So he did not grow up Catholic. He was baptized Catholic, did more Lutheran, didn't really do much church growing up.
Mm-hmm. Did you go to a lot of church?
Every Sunday.
But it was that kind where everyone agreed, we don't want to be doing this. We're doing it because we're supposed to.
Yeah, I usually didn't.
You weren't there going, please tell me a little more about Jeremiah. It wasn't like that for you.
No.
How about your parents? Did they go with you?
Yep. Yeah, they were there. So, I mean, they're very much church every Sunday people.
Still?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Well, it's working great. Sorry.
No, and I mean, I do go to church now, but I feel like it's a very different relationship to it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Is it a place where you feel like, does it make you feel a certain way being there?
I guess. I mean, I'm not incredibly religious myself, but I think that it's almost like a comfort thing for us to go.
Yeah, that's what I'm wondering. I'm not making a judgment about God or church or anything like that. I'm just saying, is it a place where you feel comfortable? So you're doing it for comfort, or is it a place where you're like, I'm going to take my kids to this and we're going to do this right this time. My parents got it wrong, but I'm going to do it right.
Yeah, I think that it's partially a comfort thing. I think that for us, it's like a nice way to kind of pause in the week.
Mm-hmm.
So we like to use it for that way, but it's definitely like a comfort thing, but I'm not like doing all the side things to church. We go to our weekly mass and
you're out of there. You're not making cookies for anybody. I got you. I brought Kugel. Nothing like that.
No.
Okay. What a pull. Kugel. You know what? Never mind. So when you decide to make this baby, sorry, it took me 10 minutes to get back to that. When you decide to make this baby, your blood sugars, you're on a pump. Where's your A1C? Is there adjustments to be made before pregnancy? How did that pre-planning go?
Yeah. So I started planning fairly well in advance. I had been married for a few years before we had a kid. I started thinking about it when I was in the 6s, my A1C. And then I got the Dexcom, which helped quite a bit.
Sure.
Before that, I was using the Medtronic sensor for a bit, which at the time wasn't a super great one. I was just checking my blood sugar like 20 times a day to try to keep it in line.
Yeah.
But once I moved to the Dexcom, then I started moving more towards the lower 6s and eventually into the 5s. But that kind of also coincided with finding the podcast.
Is it? Oh, wait a minute. Oh, I see. This is church.
Yeah.
I got you. Okay. I was going to say, like, sixes are nice. That's fine. Like, all good. And you're not eating, or are you now? I guess I should ask, like, is your eating schedule much different? Are you taking in a lot more calories and carbs and things like that?
Yeah, I eat whatever, whenever, pretty much.
Okay.
At first, when I was trying to get my blood sugars in line, I did try the low carb thing, and I truthfully made myself quite sick with it.
Mm-hmm.
I felt like I had a stomach ulcer. I just felt horrible. And I think that starting that type of thing for me wasn't healthy because it brought back all of the eating disorder feelings, and I quickly spiral.
Oh, no kidding. Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah.
You weren't doing like I've seen some people like, I'm doing low carb, and they're like frying up like ground beef and stuff. And it's all greasy and like that. Was that what you were doing?
No, I was doing, like, if I ate a snack, it was usually like cucumbers with some cheese. And I wasn't doing like very high fat, like greasy meats.
Mm-hmm.
But I think just the adjustment for my body, I just did not feel
It
good.
didn't go well for you.
I feel like I like to have some carbs.
Cool.
Yeah. So for me, it was just, especially mentally, it was a lot better once I figured out how to do things with insulin and being able to eat more freely.
Mm-hmm. I was at the store yesterday, and there was fresh bread being made. I didn't even want it, but I bought the whole loaf. I took it home. I took one slice out of it, put butter on it, sprinkled a tiny bit of pink sea salt on the butter, and I ate that.
Amazing.
Yeah. And I was like, there, I don't even know. The rest of this loaf of bread, whatever. I just wanted to do that. Really lovely.
Yeah.
My son goes, are you eating bread with butter on it? I was like, don't judge me. And so,
delicious.
Yeah. I mean, it was fantastic. As I'm talking about now, I'm thinking maybe I'll make a piece of toast to go with my eggs after we do this.
Oh, amazing. Yeah, no, I like carbs.
I hear you. You know you're going to have a baby. You know you got to bring the A1C down. Where do you know that from? The doctor tell you, or?
Yeah, I had done a lot of internet research, so I knew that. And then also I started mentioning it to my doctor again. I started planning for this probably over a year before we knew we were going to try, because I wanted to give myself time to get things in order. So I knew the goals, and I probably knew the goals even before then, but it just seemed impossible before that to get an A1C below 6.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just impossible because you didn't understand what you were doing.
Exactly. I mean, growing up, my A1Cs were very bad. So I think once I was in college and I got my A1C into more of the 6s, 7s, I felt like that was amazing. And it was an amazing step from where I had been, but getting it below that just seemed too hard.
Okay. Hey, 25 years, like how long would you say your blood sugars have been better managed? Like 3 years, maybe 4?
I mean, actually, truly better managed, I would say that long. Yeah.
Okay.
Having a good understanding and lower variability and all of that.
All that stuff.
Again, it got better when I was probably like, I don't know, maybe 8 years ago or so. Once I went to college, maybe even 10 years ago, but it was still too variable then.
Yeah. Can you measure that with A1Cs for me? Like prior to college, it was more like.
It was, I mean, my best A1Cs growing up were when I had my eating disorder, because it was in the 6s, probably just because I was low all the time. But before then, like middle school, high school, my A1C was 8. I remember the worst was 13. Yeah, it was not good.
Did you experience DKA often as you were growing up?
No, I actually never went to the hospital for DKA.
Okay.
I don't know if I was actually struggling with things. Again, when I was disconnected overnight from my pump, I don't think that was probably great.
Yeah.
But I never went to the hospital for DKA, and I never had a seizure from a low.
You disconnected for overnights?
I did when I was in the eating disorder because I didn't want to go low, and I felt horrible. But I think, I just didn't realize what was going on. I didn't understand the need for insulin if my blood sugar was okay.
Gotcha. So number's okay. I don't need insulin because insulin's to make the number better.
Yes. That was my understanding at that time.
Well, you were really lucky you didn't end up in DKA. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Would you just wake up in the morning and put it back on?
Yeah, I would check my blood sugar.
What would it be?
I could put it back on.
In the morning? How high?
Honestly, I mean, probably 200s. Growing up, it was pretty okay for me to have a blood sugar in the 300s. It just happened. 200s just happened. If there was a 1 in front of the number, it was awesome. If it was under 100, low, needed to be treated. So there's that understanding of diabetes I mean, that's why my A1C was not good.
So do you find the podcast prior to pregnancy?
I did. I found it when I was at the beginning of COVID, so 2020, when everyone was home.
Is one of these babies named after me or no?
I'm sorry. I had to name him after my husband.
What did he do?
I'm having another boy, so,
Listen, one day, one of you is going to name a baby after me. And I swear to you, I will spend a week with a smile that goes from like the side of my head to the other side of my head. I will tell everybody that I see. My wife will eventually look at me and say, will you shut the up and stop talking about that? And that's when I'll know I've got 2 more weeks of talking about
it. I mean, we haven't chosen a name for the next one, so I'll put it in. Put it in the.
May I be honest? It's a terrible name. Don't bother. It's so like short and not melodic, and you know what I mean? It just doesn't work. And a handsome Scott and a not handsome Scott doesn't work too. You don't want to have like, I mean, I don't know what you look like, but if you have like one of those little dumpy looking kids, and it's going to be terrible. Just pick something you like. You leaning towards anything?
We have some ideas, but we're not settled yet.
I hear you. Too early. Okay.
Yeah, we have time.
Your husband know anything about your type 1?
Yeah, he does. So we've been together for quite a while now, 12 years.
Oh no, I smell you out as like getting like married early for sure.
Oh yeah, he was my first boyfriend, and
yeah, you were like, this guy's nice. I'm getting out of here. No offense to him, I'm sure you love him.
Yeah.
But yeah. I don't know for sure. I was like, this girl was getting married at her high school graduation. She's like, I got to get out of here.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So we've been married for 5.5 years, though.
Does he know that, or does he think he just swept you off your feet?
We get along well.
Oh, I love thinking about younger people hearing stuff like this and going, wait a minute, what? And I also like thinking about older people going, yep. That tickles me to death.
It worked out. It all worked out.
Of course, it'll be fine. So you guys have been obviously together for a very long time. So he knows about it, but you didn't really know about it till 3 years ago.
So I think that I wasn't really open with him about it too much before. I mean, I mentioned it to him on our first date, I think. I just told him that I was type 1 just because I was afraid that was a deal breaker. But then I think he just knew like, oh, if I'm low, sometimes he would help me get juice, things like that.
Yeah.
It wasn't until the pregnancy that I really started being more open with things and talking about blood sugar and the smaller decisions behind it, just so that he could kind of get a better understanding. And he does follow my Dexcom now, not closely, but, if I'm like passed out or something, he would probably know about it.
I'm sure he'd probably call 911 for me if that happened. Right.
No. Yeah, sometimes I get a text. It's like, it says you've been like 40. I'm like, oh, it's a new sensor or something.
That's not real. Leave me alone.
Yeah.
Does he like accept that? Because when Arden says to me, I'm not really low, I go, yeah, I think you should test. Are you sure? She's like, leave me alone.
He accepts it then. When he doesn't accept it is at night, because I've can sometimes, now that I'm tired with the kid, just sleep through lows. And he's like, oh, are you okay? And he used to accept it when I'm like, yeah, I'm fine. And now he knows better than to do that.
Well, now he's like, I don't want to raise this baby by myself, so she's got to be okay.
He's like, please wake up.
It's a lot of trouble with the cars and everything. It's like, I don't want to get up at 5 o'clock on Saturday, play with that kid.
Yeah.
I'm sure the kid's lovely. Okay, so you find the podcast around COVID. I was on fire around COVID. That's when I was like, I'm going to make more and more episodes. Now I just do it like, I don't even think about it anymore. But so would you get into the pro tip series?
I started with just the pregnancy series. I was a slow starter. Now I'm pretty much a daily listener. I listen to everything.
Thank you.
But I started very slow with everything.
Just focused on this one idea. I'm going to have a baby. I want to get my stuff together better and have a nice, healthy baby.
Exactly. So I listened to that. And then I think I listened to one about the Medtronic pumps. And then I very slowly started to work into the other things. And then after I kind of caught the bug, then I started at the beginning and started listening through that way.
And you like me? You seem like a person who wouldn't like me.
No, I do.
You do like me. Okay.
No. What I struggled with at the beginning was, for me, it was hard having a non-diabetic talking about it, because I was focused on struggling to get myself in where I needed to be to have a baby. So just hearing parents talk about it was harder for me. But then I quickly got over that.
Kristen, I got online the other day, type 1. What is it called? You're younger. You'll know this. What's it called when you throw shade on somebody, but indirectly? Do you know what I mean? Somebody was calling me out online for not having diabetes, but they wouldn't use my name or tag me.
Oh.
What is that called?
I'm not very hip.
Yeah, I'm not very hip.
Okay. I'm married young.
I'm married young. I know how the Netflix works, Scott.
I don't go out.
Do you want to hear about my vacuum cleaner comes apart in 2 parts so I can walk up the steps with it and it's not too heavy?
I just got one like that. Lovely.
Do you know you can leave butter out on the counter? It doesn't go bad, Scott.
Yeah, I've heard.
No. All right, so there's this thing. By the way, anybody who doesn't use the way the French store butter, it's in a crock, but then it hovers over a thin layer of water that keeps an air barrier. And so you have room temperature spreadable butter, but it doesn't go bad. If you don't know what I'm talking about, please educate yourself. There's my butter. I've now said butter.
Seen it online. So that's what my social media is, that type of thing.
Oh, that kind. Okay. So anyway, there's that thing that people do when they want to talk about somebody, but they don't actually say it to them. I know there's probably some people out there probably just yelling in their cars, but it doesn't matter.
I know.
So someone does this online, right? And it's all about like, does it bother you that the most popular diabetes podcast is run by somebody that doesn't have diabetes? And where most people would be like, oh my God, like somebody's speaking ill of me. I was like, oh, it is the most popular diabetes podcast.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. So, a couple of lovely listeners like tried to come in and like, be supportive. And one of them tagged me along the way, I think. And I did not respond. Like, I'm an adult.
No.
I don't give a shit about that. Yeah. So I just ignored it. It is interesting though. Like that, because I don't even feel badly about I don't know who the person is, obviously, but I don't feel bad. Also, I did look at the thread because I was tagged in it. And the person who made the post clearly has to listen to the podcast. Like there's no way they would know things about the podcast that they were saying if they didn't listen to it, because they were like, anyway, that's not the point is like, I felt bad for the person because what does it matter?
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, I get that, like, I understand when people say it's off-putting sometimes. Like, I genuinely do. But in the end, like, what does it matter?
And yeah, that's definitely what I came to. I think that for me at the very beginning, because again, I was struggling so hard with an adult issue as an adult with diabetes. When I was hearing parents come on and say, oh, it's so much harder for us. I was like, my parents don't even know what's going on now. So that was like a struggle for me. But I've heard so many different stories and so many different perspectives at this point that, I mean, everybody's just sharing their own.
Yeah.
So,
if you want my perspective on it, why it's popular, besides I'm delightful, the rest of it is that I have a dispassionate view of the stories. Like you start telling me something and I'm a third person, like I'm a third party. I'm like, wow, that's interesting. Like, tell me about that. How did that happen? Like, but if you have diabetes, you're going to have feelings that connect to what some people say. And you're going to go, oh, no, I understand. And then you're going to validate them and you're never going to get deeper. Or it's not going to be your experience. And you're going to say, well, this is what I find. And you're going to have one of those boring conversations where it's like, well, this is what I think. This is what I think. I even think that's what happened with the management stuff. I haven't talked about this in forever, but because this thing was happening to Arden and not to me, and I was the one charged with fixing it and keeping it from happening again, I wasn't low when she was low. I wasn't foggy when her blood sugar was 300. Like, I was the one who was like, I can just work this problem and figure out steps to keep this from happening again. Listen, anybody can be good at this, right? Or anything. Anybody can be good at anything, but I had to be. So I wasn't going to let that happen to my daughter. You know what I mean? Like a 300 blood sugar, like I wasn't going to let that happen. Her running around low all the time, I wasn't going to let that happen. I wasn't going to let her develop an eating disorder. I wasn't going to let her, have all the other things that can happen to people with type 1 diabetes if I could help it. And so I had to step out of the whole thing, see big picture, and make decisions. So whereas that person was mad at me for not having diabetes, I would tell that person, you're welcome, because I spent a lot of my life figuring this out so I could learn how to talk about it. I will say this in case they hear this, and obviously they're going to hear it because they listen, which is now they can't talk about me anymore because now they'd have to admit that they listen. They said this thing that wasn't true in the post. And there was part of me that was like, I would like to tell them that that's not true. And then I thought, what is that going to matter? They're just not going to believe me or anything. But they said that I get preferential treatment about devices for my daughter. And that's not true. Every device we have, we pay for with our own money through our insurance. If they think Omnipod's like, hey, Scott, hello, the Omnipod blah, blah, blah is coming out now. Here's a whole box of them. That ain't how that works. I go to my doctor and I get a prescription and I wait like everybody else.
Right.
Now, you want to be mad at me for having good insurance, that's another thing. But like, there's no one at any one of these companies who has ever pushed me to the top of the line for anything because that's not even a thing they can do.
Yeah, I don't think they can wheel and deal prescriptions on the side.
Oh, no, listen, no bullshit. Like 10 years ago, Omnipod came to me and they said, we would like Arden to be like wear the pump, like be an ambassador or something like that. And I was like, well, this is a long time before the podcast. So it's even back longer. God, I can't remember my own life. It's got to be 15 years ago, maybe. And I said, I have insurance. I paid $20 for the insulin pumps. Like, I don't need product. And by the way, I know plenty of bloggers that were wearing free insulin pumps back in the day. My kid's not one of them. And I said to them, though, like, since you're willing to give it to me, why don't we just pick a person that reads my blog that's in need, financial need, and you can give them Arden's pods, the ones you wanted to give to her. And they said, oh, that's a great idea. And a month later, they came back to me and they said, we can't do that. Like, they could not, between the legal department and the people I was talking to, they could not figure out how to accomplish that. So it never happened. I've never taken, I think I have a free contour meter, but you all get them.
Yeah, so we all got those in the mail.
Yeah, because of me. And you're welcome. I thought that was funny. I was like, somebody made a podcast that's so popular about type 1 diabetes that it's actually helping people in mass. And this person wants to be mad at me for it. I was like, that's really fascinating. Kristen, this is the last thing I'll talk about the podcast. But this morning, the podcast is number 9 on Apple Podcast chart, United States for medicine. It's up there with like Rhonda Patrick's Found My Fitness and Peter Attia Drive and Dr. Mike Heyman and names that like people know. Like it's even up here right now with a podcast that Pfizer's pimping out, which means they're paying some PR firm to push their thing up on this list. And I'm only 4 spots behind them. So I'm the only podcast in this top 10 that's just a person. It's not a company. There are other diabetes podcasts. They don't chart anywhere. Like nobody listens to them in any great mass. The other day I put a post on a Facebook group and I just said, hey, how has the podcast helped you? There's 150 testimonials in it in 48 hours. Like, yeah, just say thank you. You know what I mean? Like, that's how I feel in my heart. I never say that out loud, although I have said it here on the podcast now. So now somebody's going to know I think it. When somebody does that to me, I'm like, oh my God, you're welcome. Like Kristen had a healthy baby. I don't want to say this out loud because it seems indelicate, but because of me.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Right. Like, so just why would you be pissed about that? I don't know. Now you made me upset, Kristen. Are you happy?
I'm sorry.
No, you're not. You listen. You're thrilled. You're like, go goodies, ranting and raving about something.
I was looking forward to what mine would be.
Anyway, I do want to hear about the pregnancy, though. So first, in trimesters, did it break up like the way Jenny talks about it, or what was your experience first time around?
Yeah, so when I started, I was running quite high, which is kind of the first symptom of all of my pregnancies. Has just been really high blood sugars. And then from there, it goes into the lows for the first trimester, which is where I'm at now.
Right.
And then for the second trimester is when the resistance started creeping in a bit, around 15, 16 weeks. And then just until the end of the pregnancy, pretty much just adding more and more and more insulin.
What's the swing? At the beginning, for example, what's your basal, what's your carb ratio, and what is it by the end?
I think that my basals probably went up like 30% or so.
Okay.
Right from the get-go. carb ratios went up a bit as well. So I usually am like a 1 to 10 person around there, give or take, depending on the meal.
Okay.
So I dropped it to like 1 unit for 8 carbs, somewhere around there. And then once I'm starting the lows, it maybe moves towards 1 unit for 12 carbs.
Mm-hmm.
Again, estimating around there. And the basal also dropped by probably like 30%. So it went below my starting amount.
Okay. After the baby comes, when do you see the change back?
Pretty immediately. I had to have a C-section because my son was breech. So pretty much as soon as that was all done, I had my pump settings changed so I could switch right over. And it was close to my starting. It was a little up and down, I think, because of healing and breastfeeding and everything else that goes with it. So it was a little hard to sort out, but it was at least as low as I started. And I think it was even lower than that.
Okay.
In postpartum.
What was breastfeeding like?
For me, it wasn't that bad. I didn't have like drastic lows. I know that happens to a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
I think that just maybe it's because he was eating a lot. It's just all over. My needs decreased and I always had sugar nearby, but I breastfed him for about 14 months and I never had any serious blood sugar issues from it.
Okay.
And once I stopped, I think because that was gradual as well, it was more of a gradual increase of the insulin. So I was very lucky there.
Is there any other autoimmune in your background, in your family?
Yeah, I think I have a grandfather with Hashimoto's or something with his thyroid. I don't know the connection really. There's a lot of health issues with my parents. So I'm not sure. I don't really think any of them are autoimmune, but yeah, there's not a ton of diabetes or anything like that in my family.
You want to hear something interesting?
Yeah.
This is from the NIH. Over the last few years, several studies have pointed out that these addictive disorders are associated with systematic and central nervous system inflammation. That feels like a thing I want to read more about.
Yeah.
I mean, anxiety in your family, depression?
I would say so.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. Celiac?
Not diagnosed. My mom can't eat gluten anymore, but she never did like the full testing for it. So I don't know if it's celiac or not.
Let's call her celiac.
Yeah.
Any bipolar in the family?
There is.
When am I going to be recognized for a Nobel Prize of some sort? Kristen, when?
I'll
exactly.
throw your name in.
Oh, yeah. Great. You're making a baby. You don't got any time for that. Seriously. Am I the only one saying this?
It's the only place I've heard it, but
damn right. Jesus, how many people got to come on and be like, oh yeah, I got a bipolar uncle. I'm like, yes, autoimmune, something's going on. Pay attention. How many people are going to come on with like addiction stories and like, all right, I'm done. Like I give up. I'm like, somebody's got to listen to me. I can't make, I mean, what am I going to do? I'm in the top 10. I can't get any higher. Nobody's going to pay attention. But I got to go on one of these other podcasts and pretend to like, you know how they make each other really super popular. I got to say something like about Bigfoot or aliens or something like that. And then people listen,
exactly.
Right? And then I got to make some crazy, I got to say something crazy about berberine and how it heals something. And then say gut lining a couple of times. And then what happens? Then somebody pays attention. I don't know.
That's your in.
That's my in. Trust me. There's three kinds of podcasts. Comedians talking to other comedians. People telling stories about murder. And people using bro science to get people upset and to listen more because they think maybe that would work. Those are the podcasts that exist.
The popular ones.
Well, yeah. There's plenty of other ones that nobody's listening to. But these are the ones that grab everybody's attention. By the way, this is just some free advice. I can't listen to you interview your same comedian friend 37 times a year. You got to figure out something else to say, right?
Yeah, I think they just kind of want to hang out with their friends and get paid for it.
It's 100% what's happening. I'm over here like trying to dig through all your problems, which are some of my problems and some of my family's problems, trying to come to, by the way, the GLP stuff, it's at the forefront of our understanding. Wait till you see in your lifetime what we find out about that peptide and GLP-1 and
Yeah,
this
it's been
GIP.
really interesting to listen to, even as somebody not using it. I don't know. It's just interesting.
I am like, it's a weird thing. I don't want to talk about it with you because I'm going to end up saying something insensitive, like you should see how thin I am, because I know that's not good for you. It's insane, like really insane. I'm almost at a healthy weight.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I'm just about there. Last night or yesterday afternoon, I came into the kitchen with my wife and my son, and I was like, here are 3 bottles of methylated vitamins. And they're like, what? I'm like, we're taking these for 6 weeks. And they're like, why? I'm like, because it's either bro science or it's real, and we're going to find out. Everyone was like, what? I'm like, shut up and take those.
Take it.
I was like, everyone stop thinking. Just do what I tell you. I was like, it's not going to hurt you. And I said, if it helps, it helps. And that'll be great. But even that, I think, is somehow connected to all of this. Not being able to methylate folate, of all the ridiculous things I never thought I'd say out loud. I keep wanting to have like a bigger conversation about like some supplements. You can't cull together enough good information if you don't do it on your own.
Yeah. There's a lot of junk science out there to go through.
I stuck 2 bottles in the mail and sent them to Jenny.
Oh, nice.
I was like, here, no pressure, but take these. I was like, let's see what happens.
The pills.
Take the pills. Everyone shut up and do what I say. Meanwhile, I don't know that anything will come of it or not. Like I couldn't begin to tell you. You know what I mean?
Right.
But like, it's harmless if it's not. And, the test to find out if you're can't methylate folate is expensive, and not as expensive as the vitamins are. So like, let's give it a shot and see. And we were talking to my son's doctor too about looking into something during his next blood test. Like the littlest thing. Like, I was talking to somebody and she mentioned something and I was like, wait, what? And then I started Googling and I was like, oh my God, there's a connection between digestion and this. And I was like, get out of here. I'm being vague now because I don't understand it enough to talk about it out loud. But it makes me like want to look into things. So.
Right.
And I hope you guys are all trying to help yourselves feel better too, especially with this autoimmune stuff and all the underlying things that are happening to you that you do not know from that inflammation. And I know saying inflammation is trite at this point, but if you got autoimmune issues, something's happening that shouldn't be. And if we can find a way to fix it, then, good on us. By the way, even anxiety and depression, like I'm not certain that any of this is real, but if I just Google methylation impacts, you end up with, depression, anxiety, digestion issues, like stuff like that. And you're like, oh, all right, well, let's see. So anyway, looking into stuff. Kristen, now that you're pregnant, the second pregnancy is following the first pregnancy in this first trimester so far? Lower needs?
Yeah. So this is actually my 3rd pregnancy now.
Oh.
I had a miscarriage in November. So I did have one other pregnancy, which also mirrored the first trimester.
Okay.
But yeah, so it has been mirroring it pretty closely, which is convenient for me because I can follow along and kind of know what to expect.
Yeah. Did they give you any idea about what happened with the miscarriage?
It was just random. Yeah, I had all my blood work done. Everything was good. My A1C was very good. It was just one of those things that just spontaneously happened. So I was around 7.5 weeks, so not too far.
Was that nerve-wracking when you got pregnant the 3rd time?
Yeah, for sure.
You do that thing like where people are like, this is the 7th week, where you like all uptight?
Yeah, so I was somebody that always, even with my first pregnancy, I always knew the risks of miscarriage. So I've always been, checking no matter what and always mindful of it. And I always knew it could happen and it just randomly happens. But I think that once it actually did happen to me, having the next pregnancy, which was immediately after because we were trying to schedule things in our lives, I think that having it right after was a little difficult just to try to work through the loss while also trying to get excited, but not too excited about this baby. So I think now that I'm into the 2nd trimester a bit, it's feeling a little better, but definitely still nerve-wracking.
Well, I'm glad you're feeling better, and I hope everything goes well. So it's very exciting to be waiting for a baby. That's for sure.
Yes. Yeah, we're very excited.
No, I bet. Is there anything we didn't talk about that we should have?
No, I don't think so. I will just say that thanks to the podcast and everything else, my A1C is a 4.9 right now. So definitely much better from
That's
when I was
amazing.
growing up and everything else. So definitely very thankful.
Oh, good for you. And thank you for telling me. But that's wonderful. That's a lot of hard work to get from where you were to there.
Yeah, definitely. And like I said, I'm not eating in a restrictive way at all and not having any extreme lows or anything like that. So it's definitely been really helpful for me to find you. When I found you, I was, like I said, it was during COVID. We were living in a 350 square foot Manhattan apartment. It was nice to kind of have this to get me through the COVID time.
Kristen, I'm in a 20 by 20 room. You were in a room that was only 10 feet and wider than this one?
My husband was in school, so I was working, but we were in student housing, and it was a 350 square foot, actually slightly under 346 square foot apartment in Manhattan, which was nice until COVID happened and we were locked in there.
Kelly and I once looked at a Manhattan apartment. The toilet was in the kitchen, and I think that threw us off enough that we left.
It was pretty much there here. Yeah. You walked right through the stove didn't even fit a cookie sheet. So it was quite small.
Oh, I'm glad you've slid up. Are you still in Manhattan?
No, we've moved a few times since then. We moved after my husband went out of school to Hoboken. Mm-hmm. Then we moved back to Pennsylvania for a year. And now we moved more south to Virginia. We're here for 2 years. Then we're moving again. So we move a lot.
You were from PA originally.
Yes. Close to the Jersey border.
I was going to say, you got like a Cinnaminson, like right around their vibe, something like that going on? Cherry Hill?
Yeah, I'm from the Lehigh Valley area.
Okay. All right, I got you.
Yeah.
Oh, well then. This was fun. I appreciate you saying nice things about the podcast. I hope everybody listens. I genuinely believe if you listen through the Pro Tip series, your A1C will be in the sixes in like 6 months. And like Kristen said, my theory about this is understanding how insulin works. It's not about restricting food or making you eat a certain thing. I believe that people eat the way they're going to eat. I think some of you eat terribly, probably. I don't think I'm in charge of fixing that, or that if I was in charge, I could actually sway you. I think that's the thing people come to on their own. But in the meantime, I want you all to know how to use your insulin so that you can have lower, stable blood sugars and better outcomes for your health. And then that'll give you some time and some brain space to maybe say to yourself, I don't think I want to eat this cupcake. And then, figure that part of it out too. Or processed foods or whatever you're killing yourself with that you don't realize. And that's it. Like, that's just been my theory. Always understand how to use insulin, apply it to your life, have better outcomes. Things get better.
Yeah. And that has been so helpful for me and probably a lot of other people that have struggled with the restriction. So very appreciated.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Obviously not helpful enough for anyone to name a baby after me, but that's fine. Let's not worry about it.
I'll let you know if we go there.
Seriously, if you do it, I'll feel really douchey. Don't do that. It'd make me feel goofy. And I'd be like, oh God, Kristen, is it too late to change it? Also, not for nothing, with your family background, I don't want my name attached to whatever's going to happen to that kid. So...
Yeah, no, we're changing. We're breaking cycles.
I know. No, you obviously are. You're doing a great job. Good for you. Do you feel accomplished?
I do. I think that I just feel a lot better. And again, once I was kind of out of the situation and could kind of look at things more clearly, I think that it's just been really nice to be able to kind of attribute things to that and just be able to move on and set up my own life.
This is delicate, but I'll spend 2 minutes here. I'll bring up something very delicate. Only talk about it for 2 minutes.
Perfect.
As we try to get better generation after generation, right? Like, look back at your parents, go, all right, there's the things that went wrong. Let's try not to do those. Some people fall into it, keep doing it. It slows the process of getting out of that cycle. But nevertheless, like, what do you think that, like, your parents,
mm-hmm.
What is it they're lacking or what happened to them? Do you know what it is? Can you tell?
I think that some of it is lacking some emotional maturity mm-hmm. and not really thinking through the consequences of what they might be saying and doing. Again, like if there was fights and stuff, they were trying to, or a parent would try to like get us on their side and things like that. And just things that really shouldn't be involved and just a lot of self-interest as well.
Yeah. So an emotional maturity didn't exist. Is there any aspect of this that's intellectual? Are they like 15 IQ points away from making a good decision or something like that?
No, I don't think so. I mean, they both had degrees and, jobs and functioned in society. But I think it was just, and it might have been too, just their own like pent up they had a lot of pent up anger and expectations of what should be done. And, it's a personal attack if it's not met. So I think there was some of that.
They have rules. If you're not doing what their rules say, this is you coming after them. And then they they fight
idea
back.
That any idea, if I have something that disagrees with them, then that's disrespectful and no, shut it down.
Interesting. But they're young, meaning like, because you're 28. So this means that 25 years ago, they were 25. So in 1999, your parents were 25. It's not like they were brought up during the Depression or something like that. You know what I mean? Like,
no.
So this is all religion?
Yeah, I mean, they grew up in more of a rural area in PA. So I think sometimes it's not like, living in a more urban area where things are with the times.
Mm-hmm. I think you and I are about to say goodbye, and you're about to tell me that you grew up right about where my son went to college, and I'm going to guess I know where you're at. So, all right. Kristen, you were terrific. This was very honest. I appreciate all of you coming on and being honest like this, but this was wonderful.
I'm not sharing the recording with anyone I know.
No, I wouldn't think you are. No. Hey, Mom.
Listen to that.
You want to guess if you're the energy vampire or if it's Dad? Did they say it right in front of the other one? Like, agree with me? Or did they pull you behind closed doors and do it?
It went both ways, There was no shame in their game.
Oh my God, what the fuck is wrong with everybody? Okay, I gotta go. All right, see you. Hold on. A huge thank you to Eversense CGM for sponsoring this episode of the podcast. Are you tired of having to change your sensor every 7 to 14 days? With the Eversense CGM, you just replace it once every 6 months via a simple in-office visit. Learn more and get started today at eversensecgm.com/juicebox. Having an easy-to-use and accurate blood glucose meter is just one click away. contournext.com/juicebox. That's right. Today's episode is sponsored by the Contour NextGen blood glucose meter. Did you know if just one person in your family has type 1 diabetes, you're up to 15 times more likely to get it too? So screen it like you mean it. One blood test can spot type 1 diabetes early. Tap now, talk to a doctor, or visit screenedfortype1.com for more info. Hey kids, listen up. You've made it to the end of the podcast. You must have enjoyed it. You know what else you might enjoy? The private Facebook group for the Juicebox Podcast. I know you're thinking, Facebook, Scott, please. But no. Beautiful group, wonderful people, a fantastic community. Juicebox Podcast, Type 1 Diabetes on Facebook. Of course, if you have Type 2 or you're touched by diabetes in any way, you're absolutely welcome. It's a private group, so you'll have to answer a couple of questions before you come in. We'll make sure you're not a bot or an evildoer. Then you're on your way. You'll be part of the family. If you're not already subscribed or following in your favorite audio app, please take the time now to do that. It really helps the show. And get those automatic downloads set up so you never miss an episode. Thank you so much for listening. I'll be back very soon with another episode of the Juicebox Podcast. Hey, what's up, everybody? If you've noticed that the podcast sounds better and you're thinking like, how does that happen? What you're hearing is Rob at Wrong Way Recording doing his magic to these files. So if you want him to do his magic to you, wrongwayrecording.com. You got a podcast? You want somebody to edit it? You want Rob.